just trying to...
Sonic
This is easily the creepiest thing I've ever seen.
This video has been a long time coming. What's new, Pussycats, and welcome one and all to my first ever top 10 list. Now, I had a few ideas on what I could do for this entrance to the countdown community, so I put a vote to my DeviantArt fanbase before I decided, and well, this is the topic that came out on top. And what better time to deliver it than Halloween? Now, before we start, it might be a good idea to outline disturbing. As opposed to a scary thing, which is more immediate and might even be something in the same room, a disturbing thing will usually make you feel uncomfortable without you even knowing why. It's that weird feeling that gets under your skin and makes you feel like wherever you are, you shouldn't be there. And speaking of places you don't want to be, we should probably get to talking about disturbing levels. But first, some rules. Only one level is allowed per video game series. I have to have actually played the game before putting it on the list, also known as the play before put rule. And the games in question, while non-horror games, can have horror elements. Also, quick shoutouts to Rabid Luigi, The Quarter Guy and Josh Scorcher for both inspiring me to do countdowns in the first place and for their videos motivating me to actually finish this thing. And with that out the way, let's get spooky. I'm Proceleon, and these are my top 10 disturbing locations in non-horror games. Cue the intro. Creepy things in Pokemon games are hardly a novelty nowadays. Even in the very first generation, there were references to Pokemon being hunted or just straight up dying. However, the recent games have taken this to another level, to the point where the entire plot of X and Y is basically a genocide route for the villain. But we're not talking about X and Y. We're talking about Sun and Moon. If I were to ask you what the creepiest place in Sumo is, you'd probably say something like Po Town, perhaps the Thrifty Megamart? But no. My selection for creepiest S&M location is something a bit more implicit. Yep, it's this little place, the tiny graveyard located on Akala Island. Now, a lot of people would brush this off as nothing simply because it's another graveyard, but this is something completely new to the Pokemon franchise. This is a human graveyard. Not Pokemon, there are actual people in here. This is such a strange term for the Pokemon franchise, and it caught me completely off guard. And the worst part is the even smaller details, like this preschooler who says this, and the fact that you can find Phantump here. Phantump, otherwise known as the Dead Child Pokemon. And if you already knew the backstory of Phantump while meeting one here, hopefully you can already see how this all adds up and creates a really unsettling atmosphere. Don't want to beat up the ghosts of dead Pokemon? Try the ghosts of dead children instead. This entry is actually rather personal, more of an unfortunate turn of events than anything. So I've got myself into a realm versus realm MMO called Champions of Regnum. And out of the snowy Alcius, the volcanic Ignis, and the forested realm Syrtis, I've decided to go with Syrtis. Fast forward a few days of playing. I'm about level 23 and I suddenly discover an icon on the map I haven't seen before. Naturally, being the curious cat that I am, I was keen to find out what this special unseen area was. But on my way there, I pass into number 9 on the list. As soon as I enter Arvanna Woods, I can immediately sense a change in the scenery. Instead of the lush vegetation Syrtis is known for, this place seems barren, almost lifeless. And speaking of being lifeless, this is the only area in the game so far where I've encountered actual ghosts. That being said, I somehow sneak past the undead, constantly getting the impression I am way too underleveled for this area. And I finally arrive at my destination, only to find it's an ancient cave with a huge dragon in it. And that is my story of Arvanna Woods. A fleeting experience, yes, but enough to leave a lasting impression. To be honest, there are a lot of creepy places in Blue Dragon that could have taken this spot. For the longest time I was considering the hospital ruins for this one. It's an old abandoned hospital underground with ghosts, security drones, and whatever this is. But when I reached Disc 3, I found something even more fitting for the list. Now, the first reaction a lot of people may have to Devour Village is one of cautious bemusement. We've got this desolate village surrounded by vines seemingly in the middle of nowhere. Quite the warm welcome. But it isn't just that fact that gives this place its unique atmosphere. The locals around the village are all very gloomy and barren of any hope. Where the hospital ruins are dead yet somehow alive, Devour Village is alive yet somehow dead. A trait I don't see in games very often. And to top it all off, the cause of all this despair is a huge haunted tree that's quite fond of eating people. Granted, you do eventually stop this creep and return the village to its original state, killing any disturbing atmosphere it may have had in the process, but not before seeing the tree show its true colours and having a young girl villager make an attempt on her own life. Wow. Just wow. I love you, Blue Dragon, I really do, but when you go dark, you really mean it. Disturbing areas can be described as such for a lot of different factors. Be it the looks, the music, the characters found there, the list is endless. However, the choices on my list have all had a theme so far. They've all been a deviation from the normal feeling of the game. Devour Village is debatable, I guess. Still, it's an equally big deal if the spooky level in question is literally half of your entire game. So imagine you're digging away, just trying to get those last few bits of obsidian so you can finally go to hell. When suddenly... yeah, those sounds have terrified me on more than one occasion. Going down these caves was hard enough to begin with when I was younger by sheer virtue of them being, well, caves. And I don't like caves, but for a few years I'll admit I didn't mind these segments. And then they added the ambient noises. The problem with these sounds in the caves is twofold. First off, you'll never know when they're coming. Every single time you'll be caught off guard, and it may even make you jump. I get shivers when one of these goes off. And second, they always, repeat, always go off when you're looking at a dark area. There is nothing more startling in Minecraft than looking down a ravine and hearing. Also, I'll let you in on a rather embarrassing secret. The first 2 or 3 times I heard these, I genuinely thought I was looking at Herobrine. No joke. But the only reason the caves are low on the list is that they become infinitely less scary if you turn the ambient noises off. If it weren't for that detail, the caves would have been a lot higher. Psychonauts has more or less the same problem as Blue Dragon in that it has a lot of options for creepy choices. And for a game based around psychology, there's bound to be a few times where things get weird. Now, 2 of the usual suspects when it comes to this are Mila's trauma and Thorny Towers, but for me neither of them really captured the sense of primal, unadulterated fear that comes with the theme of Psychonauts' premise. But there is one place. Lair of the Lungfish is one of those belly of the beast type situations where the protagonist, his name's Raz by the way, has to face the very thing he personally fears the most. To give this a bit of context, our friend Rasputin over here has had his family cursed to die in water, and this curse manifests itself in the form of this. The Hand of Galaccio! Naturally, this hand only appears in bodies of water, so you don't get to see it very often. But Lair of the Lungfish takes place at the bottom of a lake in an air bubble surrounded by a what? Oh yeah, freaking water! And if you get too close to the edge, you will see 2 of these things, just watching and waiting for their chance to drag you into the watery depths so that you drown! This is by far the freakiest part of the level. But let's cover the other elephant in the room, the Lungfish herself. And yes, this thing is a chick. Okay, first off, this thing's just ugly. I don't care how you spin it. Secondly, during the boss fight, you'll be getting uncomfortably close to her. And I even had trouble damaging her on my first playthrough because I just wanted to run away from her. The problem being that something even more terrifying is waiting on the other side. And then there's the chase sequence, and oh my god, the perspective in this phase really made it hard to tell what was going on. The end phase honestly isn't as bad as the other 2, but for those first 2 phases I was disorientated, completely trapped, and haunted by not 1, but 2 things that really freaked me out. If there's one indie game I've absolutely loved from start to finish, it would be Dust and Elysian Tale. It's one of the few games that's hooked me enough to finish it within weeks of buying it. And for the most part, all the environments in the game are stunning, especially for hand-painted artwork. But even that fact doesn't make the sorrowing meadows any less unsettling. Can I just say that this is the first level you ever see? It's that dead rainy forest you see on the title screen. Now that is how you make an impression. The gloomy atmosphere that accompanies the name of this place really helps hammer home the fact that this isn't like any other area you've been to up until this point. You'll be greeted by a depressing soundtrack, graves all over the place, and more zombies than you can shake a fidget at. Yeah, this is one of the few places that goes all out with its theme, and it reaches one hell of a peak very early on. The task here is that Dust is looking for the owner of this estate, or what's left of it, and halfway through an old lady called Cora,
I think it was crazy old Cora, actually.
yes Fidget, decides it might be a good idea to make you visit some mansions, because that always turns out well. Anyway, after fighting your way through spoopy caves and more zombies, including
Evil nightmares!
you finally arrive at... What? Huh? Where'd the music go? Oh well, at least the mansion is right here. Can't be too bad, right? I mean, the house is empty, right? What could possibly go wrong?
Oh my god!
I've already talked about one game practically nobody's heard of. Now time for another one. Endless Ocean. Now by nature, Endless Ocean is a pretty laid-back game. There's absolutely nothing that can harm you, the environments are beautiful, and the soundtrack is just amazing. But even a peaceful game like this isn't safe from a disturbing moment. At one point during the game, you encounter a sperm whale. So far, so normal. But then you're called on to test a special new air mixture that will give you access to where the sperm whale was going. The abyss in Endless Ocean is located right in the center of the map and makes its presence known before you even get close to it. All you have to do is arrive at Deep Valley, which is the entrance to the abyss, and the serene soundtrack fades out, replaced with this. Okay, I'm terrified and we're not even there yet. But once we get in, it's even worse. If the creepy and downright depressing music doesn't cut it, there's also the visibility. I know the ocean isn't exactly crystal clear at the best of times, and there are other areas where visibility is hindered, but at least those areas weren't pitch goddamn black. You can barely see anything down here that isn't 2 feet away from you, and even then it feels like you're lost when it's literally impossible to get lost down here. See, the abyss is only one big cavern, with the only offshoots being these small caves that just loop back around into the main area. But it feels much bigger than it actually is. Something that's really not helped by everything looking pretty much exactly the same. Add to that the very alien-looking creatures down here, such as the goblin shark, the giant squid, and the aforementioned sperm whale, who has a nasty habit of popping out of the dark whenever you turn around. Overall, the abyss doesn't disturb me as much as it could, mainly due to it being in a completely harmless game, but I'm just glad I don't have to spend much time down here. Can you tell I don't like deep water yet? For those who know me well enough, it won't be any secret that I'm a big fan of Skylanders. I love the characters, the gimmicks are actually fun, for the most part, and the level design, while a little basic, can actually be really clever at times. But ironically, my pick here comes from my second least favourite game in the series. Now before you even enter the Wilikin village properly, you can tell something's very off about the place. The colours are dull, there are wooden boards everywhere with scenery drawn on them, and there are these creepy looking dolls scattered around. Why did it have to be dolls? And it's these dolls that make this place so unsettling. They're creepy enough in the real world where they just kind of sit there not doing an awful lot. But when you shift into their world... Wonderful. In case you couldn't tell, these little abominations are the titular Wilikin, and I don't like them very much. They constantly have this cold, vacant look in their eyes that's deader than Darkspore's servers. Which I know is because they're made of wood, but it's really hard to ignore when they stare into your soul and never ever blink. And if that's not enough, they insist on calling you friend in all caps, and having this really weird speech pattern along with a monotone voice, especially for the females.
Hi friend, want to play puzzle? It is a fun time.
During the level, you also learn that the Wilikin were created by Chaos of all people, which kept me really on edge the first time I heard about it because I spent the rest of the level expecting them to turn on me. Why did they have to be dolls? But that's just the people. The village itself isn't much better. Those boards I mentioned earlier? Well, if you switch worlds during the level, which you will have to by the way, these boards turn into real houses, trees, and even bridges. Even enemies will change form between worlds, with trolls becoming cardboard themselves. This level constantly makes you question what's real and what's not, since the normal rules of the world don't seem to apply here. If anything, it's the opposite. Oh, and the Chompy Mage is here too, but at this point he's more like the crazy cherry on this creepy cake we call a level.
You are not a Chompy, so I don't like you.
But the real kicker actually comes after the level is finished. After you finally get out of this place, well, this happens.
What are you doing here?
Wanted to come with you new friends on boat. We like you.
But aren't you supposed to be kind of frozen in the real world?
Haha, that is a joke we like to play. Wilikin always alive in all worlds.
Do you know what this means? This means that even when you've been in the real world, these things weren't actually inactive. They've been awake the whole time. They're alive, and they're watching you. Why did it have to be dolls? Okay, this one's a little out of left field, so let me explain. Every now and then, I tend to get into a certain genre for a period of time, and I frequently find new games as a result. I found Smite when I got into MOBAs, Champions of Regnum with MMOs, and when I got into visual novels, I found Everlasting Summer. Now, all history aside, there are some really dark forces at work in this game. Every moment I felt like something was going on behind the scenes, and nowhere is this more apparent than at the old camp. The old camp has a reputation even in the game it appears in, triggering whispers when it's mentioned and even being the subject of its very own ghost story. You're eventually made to go there looking for your friend Shurik, who's mysteriously disappeared. And after an already delightful stroll through the woods, where depending on who you go with you might find out some backstory about the place, including the ghost story I mentioned earlier courtesy of Ulyana. And then you actually see the thing. Hear that? That, my friends, is the sound of icy chills making their way down my spine. Just the view of an old rotting camp with a playground outside under a full moon and thinking, I have to go in there, is enough to put the old camp at the very least on the list. But then there's actually what happens here. The game compares this place to a grave way more times than I'm comfortable with, and, as it turns out, there actually are ghosts here. Oh joy! Anyway, fast forward a bit and you end up discovering spooky tunnels, followed by an abandoned mine that leads you round in circles before you finally find Shurik. But it's not over yet. When you see Shurik, he's curled up in a corner, muttering something about hearing voices, and then he thinks you're one of them, whoever they are, and tries to attack you. What happens from this point until you get out is again dictated by who you go with. But I have to give special mention to the scenario where you go alone, wherein Shurik claims that they will find you. I still don't know who exactly they are, but at this point, I don't really think I want to. Alright then, we're almost at number 1, but first here's some honourable mentions. The Sunken Ship from Okami. The Underground from Undertale. Misty Bog from Spyro the Dragon. The Ancient Hospital Ruins from Blue Dragon. And Terror Time from Yokai Watch. We've seen places that are creepy for various reasons on this list. but never underestimate the effectiveness of pure, dead noise. Dark Keigan is by far the spookiest place I have ever been. For those not familiar with the game this is from, Zerahypt is an open world simulation game created by a YouTuber known as Cirsa, and for the most part it's actually a really fun game. It shares Endless Ocean's quality of being a game you can just explore at your own leisure without too much in the way of threats. But this area stands out as an almighty curveball. There still isn't anything that can harm you here, but does there really need to be? Honestly, I think I'd feel better if there were. Dark Keigan, true to its name, is nearly pitch black, to the extent even vehicle lights don't work very well, and that already makes me cautious. Finding a way through this place is easier said than done, and that really is a feat for an area that's as open as this is. At first I was too scared to even stray from the few sources of light that are provided, but as soon as I did, yeah, I think it goes without saying that those noises made me panic more than I care to admit. I legit quit the game when I heard those the first time. But it gets worse. Because even when I found out what was making the noise and knew it couldn't hurt me, I was still nervous. How does that work? But it doesn't stop there, because there is actually a sub-area in here. By going into this building, you can find your way through to an underground cave called Knug, which I really hope I'm pronouncing right, and you guys already know how I feel about caves. Combine the darkness, noises, and creatures from earlier with said cave, and we got ourselves a recipe for the ultimate nope. And yet, I keep coming back. See, Zerahypt is crafted in such a way that you're encouraged to explore in order to find stuff. You only get the best out of it by looking everywhere. And in the case of Dark Keigan, I left that place twice because I was just too scared to carry on. But the urge to know what was there just kept dragging me back. While I'm there, it's a constant tug of war between wanting to press on out of curiosity and wanting to nope out of there as soon as possible. I'm completely terrified, but I still kind of want to be there. And that might be the most disturbing thing of all. So this has been a Tiger Top 10, and if you like what you saw, you can like, comment and subscribe. If you want to leave a suggestion for the next top 10 or just some constructive criticism, feel free to do so as well. If you want my social links, they will be down below. And as always, I have been Proceleon, and happy Halloween.